It has been nearly 3 years since I returned my Tesla Model 3. I saw this picture pop up on my Photos app and I got kind of sad. Since then, I have not been an EV owner. We went from gas to EV, which is where most people stay, and then we went from EV to gas, and it's been an interesting road. And there seems to be this like trope. Once you go to EV, you can't ever go back because it's like so good and it's the best thing ever. I don't actually agree with that like at all. I think EVs are great. I love them, and there probably will be one in our future very soon. But right now, living a non-EV lifestyle, it has been great. And there's a lot of things about it that I think are far superior to owning an EV that you just can't get with the EV offerings we have right now. But that being said, there are things about owning an EV that I totally, completely miss. And it's making me want to get an EV again, and maybe making me regret my decision to not have one at all. Okay, so a little backstory here. Back in 2019, May of 2019, I picked up my dual motor Model 3. Absolutely love this thing. Now, the landscape of EVs back then was completely different. There really weren't that many options. And if you wanted something semi-affordable that was also, had great tech and had great range and more importantly for me, great charging infrastructure, the Model 3 is kind of the only option. The Model Y didn't exist yet. You could get a Model X or an S, but those prices are significantly higher. And you could go to a different brand, but then the charging infrastructure back then, I mean, is nothing compared to what it is today, even though today it's still not that great. So for me, in my opinion, this was the only option of viable EV, at least personally, that I would ever go for. And well, my time with it was great. This car, the reason it went back is because I leased it. Now, I had never leased a car before. I probably won't ever do it again. It was kind of more an experiment to see what that was like, what that process was like. It was fine. It ended up being fine. I had a 36-month lease with 15,000 miles, returned the car with just a few thousand miles left. So it was fine. I just would prefer to own the car that I'm driving every day to, I don't know, just make it more my own. It's not a rental. This video is not really about leasing, but anyway, that is why the car went back. But unlike what I think a lot of people would do, which is get another EV or just get another Tesla or whatever other car, I didn't. Instead, we got this, my 2015 Lexus GX 460. And while there's not that many more completely opposite cars than the Model 3 and the Lexus GX, these things are not the same in any way, shape, or form. The GX uses gas. It's not efficient in any way. It's not a car. It's comfortable, but it's not really fun to drive. It's not fast. This is the complete opposite of my Model 3, but it did exactly what we needed it to do. We bought this pretty soon after we moved to Utah, and we do a ton of adventuring. We go camping. We love to do off-roading. And before, we would just do it all in our Subaru, which is fine, but it was really lightweight stuff. Now we can kind of, do real legit off-roading and go camping in places that most people never get to see. And that is enabled by having this car. So for me, the choice to get this over the Model 3 or any other EV at the time, it was completely worth it. But now my wife and I, we're starting to get that itch. If you watch my Cybertruck video, that kind of sold me that the next car we get is definitely going to be an EV, because the landscape again has changed so much, even in the last few years since we got rid of the Model 3, but especially since we got the Model 3 to begin with. So I think an EV is going to be in our future pretty soon. Now, I say I think because after thinking about it more, like what do I want from a car? What am I missing with the GX that I can't get from it? It really had nothing to do with being an EV, rather it just had to do with being a fun car that was fast, had great handling, and that I wanted to drive. There's a lot of times where I don't want to drive the GX because it's lifted, it's got big tires. It's just not the most fun car to drive unless I'm going off-road. In that sense, it's great, but for everyday driving, that is not the best option. And so when I think about a fun car, well, that isn't necessarily an EV. Now, there's obviously parts of EVs that I think are great. If you want that fast acceleration, EVs are where to go. But what if you're looking for is, a great experience when it comes to handling? You want a great interior, you want something that sounds really good, or you want something that is fast as well. I mean, there's just a ton of options, and they aren't always going to be an EV. And when you're someone like me who absolutely loves cars, and before the Model 3 I had an Audi S4, for me there's just so many more options, and paying gas is not really that big of a deal for me, at least right now. But there are things about owning an EV, specifically a Tesla, that I do miss. The biggest one, of course, like I kind of mentioned, is the driving dynamics, how fast it is, the handling. I absolutely love that about Teslas in particular. I like the way they drive, so that is great. But the other big thing I miss a lot is software updates. When I got my car back in 2019, it was very bare bones. The car is completely different from what it was back then. And just in the time that I owned it, it got many software updates that changed the car completely. And I miss that. I like those updates. I love tech. So that is something that I wish I had. And another thing I miss, or maybe not miss, but I look forward to with an EV, is being able to charge at home. This is a big point that people always bring up. Now, back when I had my Model 3, I lived in an apartment, so I still had to go to a charger most of the time to charge. It's kind of a pain in the butt, so I don't miss that at all, actually. But now that I own a home, I can install a charger here and never have to think about charging again unless I'm on a trip or something. So that I'm looking forward to a lot. And those things I think are real benefits with owning an EV, and they are big reasons why I think a Tesla or an EV is going to be in my driveway soon. But I do think that the EV fanboys, which I'm kind of one of them honestly, but I do think that the idea that you can never beat what an EV can offer, I think it's kind of silly. The way I look at it is this: there are cars that serve certain purposes, and you have to decide why you need a car, and then you can make the best purchase. So for me right now, or back when I got my GX, the reason we got it is because I needed a car that served a particular purpose, which was being an adventure rig that we could take off-road. And you just couldn't do that with any of the offerings at the time. And back when I got my Model 3, the purpose was not going on adventures, rather it was doing commutes in Southern California, where a Model 3 makes absolute perfect sense. So I think it's important to kind of stay away from all the hype and make your own decision. Think about why you need a car, what you need the car to do, and then choose from there. If you need a truck, okay, well, there are some EV options out there, but maybe the non-EV options are going to do it better. For example, in my case, the Cybertruck is great. I think I love driving it on road, but if I took it on some of the adventures we did this last year, it simply wouldn't be able to. Not because of the performance or the dynamics, but rather because the charge just wouldn't work. So if I was purely getting the Cybertruck, for example, or even a Rivian R1T, if I was purely getting that truck for adventures, there's simply some adventures I wouldn't be able to do with that car. So for me, having something like the GX or in another truck, maybe a Tundra or a Tacoma, still makes more sense, even if having an EV makes sense for a lot of other things. So you just have to decide why you need a car, what the purpose is, and what actually fits best. And well, for my life where I am right now, the GX has been a great replacement to my Model 3, but that's starting to change a bit. Most of the time I'm doing a lot of city driving, and I'm looking for something a little bit more fun, and an EV might just be that option. But yeah, I don't know, this was just kind of a ranty video. I went from gas to EV and back to gas. I don't regret it, but I do see the appeal of both sides, and I think that is going to make me have a much more informed decision for whatever car I buy next.